This is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardinis, to use this as educational material.
The self-understanding of anthropology.
Harry Triandis.
Harry C. Trendis was a renowned psychologist best known for his work and cross-cultural psychology. He focused on understanding how cultural difference influence behavior, values, and social dynamics. One of his major contributions was the development of the theory of individualism and collectivism, which distinguishes between cultures that prioritize individual goals and independence. Trendes also explored topics like social behavior, identify, and how cultural factors shape attitude, social interaction, and perception. His work has had a significant impact on fields like psychology, sociology, and anthropology, particularly in the study of cultural influences on human behavior.
Harry Triandis and the Cultural Variations of Self, a journey into the interplay of individualism and collectivism.
Harry Triandis and the Cultural Variation of Self, a journey into the interplay of individualism and collectivism. Harry Triandis, a renowned social psychologist, dedicated his career to understanding the complexities of individualism and collectivism as cultural dimensions. He believed that these concepts go beyond simple labels and deeply influence how individuals perceive themselves, interact with others, and navigate the world. This exploration delves into Triandis' groundbreaking work, examining his insights into the cultural variation of self within individualistic and collectivistic societies. In individualistic cultures, Triandis' research highlights the independent self, where individuals define themselves through personal characteristics and achievements, prioritizing autonomy and self-reliance. Key features include self-sufficiency, a focus on personal goals, direct communication styles, and a view of competition as positive. Conversely, collectivistic cultures emphasize the interdependent self, where individuals define themselves in relation to their group, prioritizing collective needs and group harmony above individual desires. This is characterized by a strong emphasis on a group cohesion, interdependence, respect for authority, and a shared sense of responsibility for the group's well-being.
The collective self. An anthropological perspective.
The collective self refers to identity shaped by social, cultural, and communal ties rather than individualism. Anthropologists like Marcel Mauss and Clifford Geest argue that selfhood is not universal but structurally constructed. In many societies, personal identities is defined by relationship, kindship, and shared responsibilities. For example, indigenous communities emphasize communal land ownership, prioritize harmony, and group cohesion. Globalization is influencing collective identities, sometimes strengthening culture bonds or challenging tradition structures.
Hello everyone! Today I'll explain a psychological concept by Harry Triandis that helps us understand how we see ourselves and interact with others. He identified three key aspects of the self: the private self, the public self, and the collective self. Let's go through each one briefly. First is the private self. Private self refers to our inner thoughts, emotions, and personal beliefs. This is who we are when we are alone, without external influence. For example, when you reflect on your goals or think about your personal values, you're engaging with your private self. Next is the public self. Public self is how we present ourselves in social situations. It is shaped by societal expectations and the image we want to maintain. For example, the way you behave in a formal setting like job interview is likely different from how you act around close friends. Lastly is collective self. Collective self is our identity within a group such as our family, culture, or community. In collectivist cultures like Japan or China, this aspect is strong because people prioritize group harmony over individual desires. In contrast, individualistic cultures like the USA or UK emphasize personal identity and independence. To summarize them, the private self is our personal identity. The public self is how we present ourselves to others, and collective self is our connection to groups. These aspects influence our behavior and cultural values. Understanding them helps us improve self awareness and how we interact within others.
Anthropology examines the interplay between the private and public sphere of human life. Private, this generally refers to the personal, intimate domain like family, home, and individual experiences. Anthropologists study how this domain shaped by cultural norms, social structures, and power dynamics. So, private, it focuses and personal, intimate domain, often considered hidden from public view. So next, public. This encompasses social, political, and economic institutions as well as public spaces and discourse. Anthropologists investigate how individuals and groups navigate and participate in these public spheres, examining issues like power, inequality, and social change. So, public, it focuses in social, political, and economic institutions, public spaces, and collective action.
Understanding the Filipino.self, Pantayan Panano, Labas.lub, and Lalain.
The Filipino is shaped by a rich blend of culture, history, and personal experience. Central to the Filipino identities are values like kapwa and bayanihan, which emphasize family and community. Historical influence from Spanish, American, Japanese colonization have left lasting marks, often creating a blend of traditional Filipino culture with Western values. The Filipino diaspora also plays a role in shaping identity as many Filipinos navigate the balance between their heritage and values of their host countries. In modern times, Filipinos face challenge of reconciling traditional values with global influence, particularly through social media and evolving role of gender and social hierarchies. Psychological concepts like Kia and amor proprio continue to influence self-perception and behavior. Despite historical struggles, there is a growing sense of Filipino pride and nationalism as younger generation reclaim their identity and celebrate their cultural heritage. Overall, the Filipino self is dynamic, constantly adapting to both internal and external changes.
Labas, lube, and lalam, layers of the Filipino self. Labas, lube, lalam.
Pantayong Pananaw is a Filipino framework that emphasizes the importance of viewing historical, culture, and social issues from the perspective of the Filipino people themselves rather than from an external or foreign viewpoint. The term Pantayo comes from the Filipino word tayo, meaning we or us.
and it reflects a collective Filipino identity. The approach encourages a deeper understanding of Filipino history, identity, and society by prioritizing the Filipino experience and values. It advocates for using Filipino language, culture, and worldview to analyze and interpret various issues rather than relying on Western or foreign concepts. In essence, it's about reclaiming the narrative and asserting the voice of the Filipino discourse about their own culture, history, and future. This perspective has been particularly influential in Filipino philosophy, history, and literature. As a challenge to tradition, Western-dominated approach to studying the Philippines, it promotes a more exclusive self-affirming view of Filipino identity and heritage.
Labas, lube, and lalim, layers of the Filipino self.
Labas is the external layer of the Filipino self, encompassing physical appearance, social rules, and outward behavior. It is how one presents oneself to the world. It can be seen as the mask we wear, shaping the identity we project, sometimes as a true reflection of ourselves, and other times as a shield. It also acts as the first impression, influencing how others perceive us through our words and actions and appearance. Like a stage performance, the bus changes depending on the rules we play in different social settings, adapting to expectation. Lastly, it serves as the armor of identity, protecting our inner self while allowing us to navigate society and confidence.
The concept of loob comes from Filipino philosophy, often described as the inner self of the core of one's being. It represents the most authentic and unfiltered part of a person, where deeper truths about one's identity, desires, and purpose reside. For instance, when a Filipino speaks of pagloob or loob ng malinis, they are often referring to the purity or sincerity of one's intention or heart. Alim represents an individual's connections to their ancestors. It's not just personal history, but ongoing relationship with the past that the shape one's present identity. This idea aligns with the belief that we carry the memories and wisdom of our forebears with us. Even if we're not always conscious of it, many cultures have practices, rituals, and oral traditions that help preserve and transmit these as ancestral connections.